Right now, if you stepped outside into open desert at noon with no water, no shade, and no plan, you'd have maybe a few hours before your body started shutting down. Modern humans, with air conditioning and instant access to a fridge, are actually pretty bad at handling extreme heat without help. And yet, some of our ancestors didn't just survive in deserts. They lived their entire lives there, generation after generation, in places where the ground itself gets too hot to touch. So what did they know that we've mostly forgotten? The first part of the answer isn't clever technology. It's your own body, because humans are, weirdly, one of the best-built mammals on Earth for dealing with heat, and almost nobody realizes it. Most large mammals cool down by panting. Humans don't pant. Instead, we sweat, and we sweat an enormous amount compared to almost any other animal our size. A human can have somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands spread across bare skin, and that skin isn't covered in thick fur the way a lion's or a camel's is. That combination, exposed skin plus an extreme sweating capacity, means a human running across open, hot ground can actually outcool and outlast a four-legged predator over long distances, even one that's faster in a short sprint. Researchers studying this, including biologist Daniel Lieberman at Harvard, have argued this is part of why early humans became such effective persistence hunters, chasing prey animals not by outrunning them in a burst, but by staying on their trail long enough that the animal eventually overheats and collapses, while the human, dripping sweat the whole way, keeps going. But sweating that much only works if you can replace the water you're losing, and that's where knowledge became just as important as biology. Groups living in deserts like the Kalahari developed an extraordinarily precise understanding of where water actually was, even when there was no visible water anywhere. The San people, who have lived in the Kalahari for tens of thousands of years, learned to locate water stored underground in the swollen roots and tubers of specific desert plants. Some of these plants can hold enough moisture that digging one up and squeezing it is functionally the same as finding a small canteen buried in the sand. This knowledge wasn't guesswork passed down loosely. It was closer to a map, memorized and taught deliberately, of exactly which plants to dig for in exactly which conditions. Timing mattered just as much as location. Desert-dwelling groups organized their entire day around the sun instead of fighting it. Hard physical work, hunting, traveling, gathering, happened in the cooler hours around dawn and again in the evening. The hottest hours in the middle of the day were spent resting in whatever shade could be found, conserving both water and energy instead of burning through both under direct sun. It sounds simple, almost obvious, but that discipline, resting during the exact hours when your body is losing the most water, is the difference between a sustainable routine and a slow-motion emergency. Clothing played a role too, and it's the opposite of what most people assume. Covering the skin in the desert, with loose, breathable fabric, actually helps regulate temperature by blocking direct sun exposure while still allowing sweat to evaporate underneath. Bedouin and Tuareg communities across North African and Arabian deserts developed loose, flowing garments for exactly this reason, and those same design principles still show up in modern desert survival gear today. Here's something that should stop you for a second. Some desert populations show measurable physiological differences shaped by generations of heat exposure, including more efficient sweating responses and better heat tolerance at the cellular level compared to populations that evolved in cooler climates. That's not something anyone learned. That's evolution quietly optimizing the human body itself for a specific, brutal environment, over thousands of years of the people who handled the heat best surviving to have children, and the ones who didn't, not. Food mattered here too, in a way that isn't obvious. Desert diets often leaned heavily on foods with naturally high water content, certain fruits, roots, even the blood and stomach contents of hunted animals, because every bit of water that arrived through food was water that didn't have to be found separately. Nothing was wasted, because in an environment like that, waste was the same thing as risk. Shelter design followed the same logic of working with the environment instead of against it. Structures were often built low, partly buried, or positioned to use natural shade from rock formations, keeping the air inside noticeably cooler than the air outside without any need for material that had to be hauled long distances across sand. Even the color and texture of traditional desert dwellings, often light-colored and thick-walled, reflected sunlight during the day while slowly releasing stored coolness at night, an entirely passive form of temperature control built centuries before anyone had a word for insulation. So here's the full picture. A body built to sweat instead of pant. Generations of precise, memorized knowledge about where water hides underground in plants most people would walk right past. A daily schedule built entirely around avoiding the sun's worst hours instead of pushing through them. Clothing designed to work with sweat instead of trapping it. And underneath all of it, a slow evolutionary reshaping of the body itself toward heat tolerance most modern humans have never needed and never developed. Next time you feel yourself getting irritable after 10 minutes without air conditioning, remember that somewhere, not that long ago in evolutionary terms, people were running down animals across open sand at midday and calling it Tuesday. The desert never got easier. Humans just got extremely good at reading it.